Hello there, Drew here. So back again, welcome to my video, and thank you for watching. So I hope this gets a little discussion going, because it's pretty interesting, since abortion is normally a very controversial issue, right? And I'm going to take it from a slightly different viewpoint, not just as a male, of course. Since way back when I started my YouTube channel, I had a poll asking, why did you have an abortion? And most of them were about the issue of economics, mainly that they couldn't afford it, didn't want the responsibility, but it was mostly around economic issues of why women had abortions. Now, I don't have an opinion per se based on the current debate the way it is, in terms of are you pro-choice or anti-abortion. That's the way it is these days. But from a little research I've done, it's obvious that nobody today amongst either side understands at all why it was brought up in the first place and who brought it up. Because if I said that George Herbert Walker Bush Sr., right, put his picture up right here, right, this is the grandfather of family planning. Now, supposedly this guy is some conservative Republican, and that's the big defender of life, so-called, right, is conservative Republicans. But the guy who got family planning going was George Bush Sr. Right? Now, of course, earlier, you had in the 20s, you had a whole craze for eugenics and those kinds of things about the issue of wiping out those inferior races. And this, of course, goes back to earlier than that, in terms of Huxley, Darwin, that whole grouping of these British aristocrats who were advocating this kind of approach to how to deal with those poorer classes of people, in terms of getting rid of them and limiting their numbers and so forth. And of course, beyond that, you had a group of these hack writers for the East India Company and the British Empire. Malthus, right? John Stuart Mill, Adam Smith, right? All these guys who wrote on behalf of the East India Company, right? And the issue of, okay, how do we take this situation we're in, where the British Empire is going around conquering and looting and mass murdering and so forth like that, and how do we make it look okay? So they just wrote a whole bunch of tracks on, like I said, why it was okay for the British Empire to go around conquering and enslaving people, right? So that's where Malthus comes out of, is the East India Company, and this propaganda effort to show why all this mass murdering and genocide and poverty is just a fact of nature, right? Right? So now that gets into abortion, because Margaret Sanger, somebody who people should know about, is famous for, in the 20s, advocating family planning. But the big thing about her is she was doing it on behalf of the issue of eugenics, wiping out all those inferior people. Let's see. But that comes up to now. George Bush, when he was a representative in the House of Representatives, was one of the stronger advocates of family planning. But it wasn't for anything like you think today, because the issue for him then was the issue of cutting the number of poor people and blacks in particular. That was his big emphasis, was limiting and getting rid of black people, right? But let's face it, you know, Prescott Bush, right? He was one of these top Wall Street guys that was backing the Nazi Party explicitly because of their wholehearted support for eugenics. Right? So that's the bigger issue we're coming into here is Bush, as a representative, was the biggest promoter of family planning. So we had hearings on this, for instance, on the need. Let's see. I'll quote Bush right here. The federal government, along with many state governments, has taken steps to accelerate family planning activities in the United States, but we need to do more. We have a clear precedent. When the Salk vaccine was discovered, large-scale programs were undertaken to distribute it. I see no reason why similar programs of education and family planning assistance, all on a voluntary basis, should not be instituted in the U.S. on a massive scope. It's imperative that we do so, not only to fight poverty at its roots, not only to cut down on our welfare costs, but also to eliminate the needless suffering of unwanted children and overburdened parents. Now, Jessica Matthews of the former leader of one of these zero growth outfit, World Resources Institute, she wrote about Bush. In the 60s and 70s, Bush not only embraced the cause of domestic and international family planning, he had aggressively sought to be its champion. As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, Representative Bush shepherded the first major breakthrough in domestic family planning legislation in 1967, and later co-authored the legislation commonly known as Title X, which created the first federal family planning program. On the international front, Bush recommended the U.S. support the United Nations Population Fund. He urged in the strongest words that the U.S. and European countries make modern contraceptives available on a massive scale. So when he had hearings, he had two major figures. One, Dr. Alan Guttmacher, then the president of Planned Parenthood, and a protege of Margaret Sanger. Of course, for those who know the history of Nazi Germany, the final solution made eugenics and all this talk before, right, made it rather kind of unpopular, you know. But of course, when he gave his testimony in front of the Congress, right, it was all about weeding out the unfit, and the need of sterilization, infantcide, and abortion in the name of race betterment. And I'll give you a quote from their dialogue. Let's see. Oh yes, Social Security amendments. Bush and Mr. Guttmacher had this little dialogue. Bush: is there any opposition to Planned Parenthood from other organizations or groups, civil rights groups? Guttmacher: we do have problems. We are in a sensitive area in regard particularly to the Negro. There are some elements in the Negro group that feel we are trying to keep down the numbers. We are very sensitive to this. We have a community relations department headed by a most capable Negro social worker to try and handle that part of the problem. This does, of course, cause us a good bit of concern. Bush: I appreciate that. For the record, I would like to say I am 1,000% in accord with the goals of your organization. I think perhaps more than any other type of organization, you can do more in the field of poverty and mental health and everything else than any other group that I can think of. I commend you. Now, the other person that Bush brought into the testimony on the need of family planning was a guy called William Shockley, who was a failed businessman. And his big thing, of course, was eugenics, limiting those inferior races, and really nasty stuff like that. Okay, 1980 interview. When asked if, well, it was just asked if limiting so-called inferior races was kind of racist. He said, if you found a breed of dog that was unreliable and temperamental, why shouldn't you regard it in a less favorable light? And of course, when he ran for the U.S. Senate, his campaign was about sterilization of people with IQs lower than 100. Yeah, so, all right, so that's it. What do you think? Pretty controversial issue there, right? I even tried to ask, there was a healthcare event, one of these Obamacare events recently nearby. And of course they had family planning there, and I asked them about this issue about Sanger and eugenics, and she vociferously denied that was true. Right? They'll do this. They'll just deny that fact. But here you go. Bush Sr., the father of family planning. Oh my God. I hope you Republicans out there, their heads are exploding right now. Okay, so that's it. It's not an issue of are you pro-choice? Oh God, these stupid liberals. But I mean, what can you say? I mean, most liberals have been indoctrinated into this Malthusian mindset that there's limited resources and it's better to cut the population. Right? They believe that, really. So that's it. Okay. This is Drew. Thank you for watching. I hope the discussion doesn't get too nasty, but that's it. Thanks. See you later.